Okay, you guys like to stand up in the kitchen base lectures, so that's what I'm gonna give to you so I can use my arms until my legs get tired and then I'll go sit down again. But for right now, I can stand up and lecture. So, today we are going to talk about the different colonial regions. And I'm actually on my phone right now, so if you want to follow along, the link is on Google Classroom. You can pull it up right on your phone and follow along with me. If I can do it, you can do it. So the middle Chesapeake and southern colonies. So let's start off talking about New York and New Jersey. The primary motive for establishing the middle or mid-Atlantic colonies of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware was to develop profitable trading centers. The Dutch were some of the first to settle in this area. In the late 16th century, with the help of Protestants in England, the people of the Netherlands won their independence from Spain. The Netherlands evolved into a major commercial and naval power and challenged its former benefactor, England, on several occasions during the 17th century. With this newfound power, the Dutch became a leading colonial presence, especially in the East Indies. Like the English, the Dutch developed colonies by authorizing joint stock companies to go forth and establish trading outposts and commerce. The Dutch East Indian Company established a trading empire that was profitable for over 300 years, seeking greater riches and a passageway around America to China. The Dutch East India Company hired Henry Hudson, an English explorer. Hudson sailed along the upper coast of North America, and in 1609 he encountered Delaware Bay and the river named for it, the Hudson River. He filed a claim to all of this land for the Dutch. The Dutch West India Company was also influential, but operated primarily in the Caribbean, where it was more interested in raiding than trading. By 1624, based on Hudson's earlier claim to the Hudson Valley, the Dutch West India Company permanently settled New Netherland in the Hudson River area as a fur trading port. In 1626, the Dutch brought Manhattan Island from the Indians for pennies an acre, and they started trading posts at New Amsterdam, later called New York, and upriver at Fort Ord, later called Albany. So he settled this area primarily for what purpose? Primarily because he wanted to put a port there for better trading operations. The New Netherland colony was highly aristocratic, with large feudal estuaries along the Hudson River. These grand estates, called patronships were granted to stockholders who promised to have 50 adults living in the estate within 40 years. This approach to colonization met with little luck because volunteers for serfdom were hard to find. So what was this strategy for colonization? To inspire people, to inspire land developers to get adults into these pieces of land. So if more adults come over, more babies, and then a colony is approved, it's done for, it's in the works. New Netherland experienced difficulties from the outset. The shareholders demanded dividends even at the expense of the colonies' welfare. The New England colonies to the north regarded them as intruders. Although not as strict as the Puritans, the Dutch company ran the colony in the interest of the stockholders, and with little tolerance for free speech, religion, or democratic government. Peter, the governor set by the Dutch West India Company, was in absolute control of the colony's government. However, the inhabitants showed nearly total indifference to his leadership. I'm gonna move this camera around. Okay, there we go. I like it better already. The relationship between Holland and England alternated from alliance against nations such as Spain to conflicts as they both sought to become the dominant trading empire. During a time when the two countries were experiencing hostilities, James, the Duke of York, and brother to King Charles II, felt that the New Netherland colony could easily be conquered. Precipitating a conflict, King Charles II granted his brother a charter for the region between Maryland and Connecticut, which included New Netherland. As was the case for the New Netherland area, many of the original 13 colonies was settled by proprietorships. The Crown granted individuals or a group of partners a charter to develop these proprietary colonies. In contrast, Virginia and the New England colonies were a central corporate ventures sponsored by joint stock companies that funded the settlements as investments. An English fleet soon set sail to seize the Dutch colony, and in 1664 they threatened to take over New Netherland. The governor could not get anyone to defend the colony, and the Dutch surrendered without firing a shot. New Netherland was now an English possession, but the Dutch continued to exercise an important social and economic influence on the land and language, contributing such words as cookie, crib, and Santa Claus. Their merchants also gave Manhattan much of its original bustling commercial atmosphere, having developed such places as Wall Street and Broadway. New Amsterdam was renamed New York in honor of the Duke of York. The English now ruled a stretch of land that ran from Maine to the Carolinas. Out of all of the English colonies, the settlers in the middle colonies came from the most varied backgrounds. By 1664, the city of New York best illustrated these varied backgrounds with inhabitants that included Scots, French, Dutch, Swedes, German, Norwegians, Irish, Poles, Portuguese, and Italians who were forerunners of millions to come. So we have a melting pot in New York is basically what this outline is signaling. We have people from all over the world coming to New York to find, to basically be in America. Soon after the Duke of York conquered New Netherland, he granted the land between the Hudson and the Delaware rivers to two of his friends, Sir George Carteret and Lord James Berkeley. The new territory was named New Jersey in honor of Carteret's native island of Jersey. To attract settlers, the two men offered land on easy terms and established freedom of religion and a relatively democratic government. The new colony grew rapidly. Several of the migrants were New England colonists who were leaving the already overworked soil of their own colonies. So, these people had a genius idea of if you want people to move to your land, just offer them free land. And this will be the case all throughout American history as we move west during Manifest Destiny, imperialism, all of that. You'll see people offering people free land as an attraction to pull people in. It is a pull factor. We've learned about this in middle school. The two proprietors split New Jersey with a diagonal line into East and West New Jersey, Carteret taking the east side. In 1674, Berkeley sold West New Jersey to a group of Quakers who were trying to escape persecution. The Quakers, a group formerly known as the Religious Society of Friends, were a religious movement founded by George Fox. Dismayed by the struggles among Calvinists, Anglicans, and Catholics in England, Fox preached that spirituality was rooted in an individual's personal relationship with God. This religious view left little room for clergy, liturgy, or hierarchy and rejected doctrines such as predestination. Fox's followers were called Quakers, which was originally meant as an insult because they trembled at the name of the Lord. Quakers were deeply devoted to their beliefs. They opposed warfare and resorted to passive resistance. This is fun. Passive resistance Passive resistance. Quakers in England were being persecuted, killed, and imprisoned for their beliefs. As with the Puritans, however, the English government was willing to put up with the colonies of the Quakers in America so long as they expanded the English presence on the Atlantic coast. The Quakers eventually acquired East New Jersey in 1680 when Carteret died. The acquisition of New Jersey gave the Quakers a place where they could practice their religion in peace. Then in 1702, the Crown reclaimed and combined East and West New Jersey into a single royal colony. So that's the story behind New York and New Jersey and how they got their colonies started. Now we are transitioning to Pennsylvania and Delaware. The Quaker efforts to colonize into the Americas continued west of New Jersey in a fertile area called Pennsylvania. This land belonged to William Penn, an athletic young gentleman who was the son of the wealthy English admiral. While a student at Oxford, Penn was attracted to the Quaker faith. He supported the belief that religion should involve a personal relationship with God and that there was no need for an established church. He also rejected the ideas of rank and hierarchy, along with the trappings of those things such as fancy dress for the wealthy or tipping the hat in defense, deference to superiors. When his father died, Penn inherited a large estate, including a claim of 16,000 pounds. His father had loaned the king. In 1681, King Charles II settled the claim with Penn by granting him proprietary rights to a religion north of Maryland and west of the Delaware River. The king named the land Pennsylvania, meaning Penn's Woods, in honor of Penn's father. Penn was eager to establish a refuge for fellow Quakers in Pennsylvania. So he was eager to attract Quakers to his land in Pennsylvania that was gifted to him by the king. So it was a gift by the king. His father died. He inherited money. He gave the king, and he wanted to attract Quakers to come to his settlement. When he assumed control of the areas, there were already several thousand Dutch, Swedish, and English squatters on the land, making it easier to populate the area. However, Penn energetically marketed the new colony so he could attract a heavy flow of immigrants. He published glowing descriptions of the colony in various languages and encouraged forward-looking individuals to come with him. Penn promised substantial land holdings, and by the end of 1681, he had encountered about 1,000 immigrants who settled in Pennsylvania. And in October, he arrived himself with 100 more He arrived himself with 100 more. Pennsylvania grew rapidly because it was best advertised of all the colonies, and no restrictions were placed on immigration to the colony, which means anyone could, hold on guys, anyone could settle in this settlement. No restrictions were placed. Religious freedom, anyone can settle. The relationship between the Quakers and the Indians were admirable because of the Quakers' friendliness and Penn's policy of purchasing land from the Indians. So we see this idea of purchasing land from the Indians put into effect. Penn tried to protect the Indians in their dealings with settlers and traders. The relationship was so peaceful that the Quakers often used the Indians as babysitters. Penn even went so far as to learn the language of the Delaware Indians, and for nearly 50 years the groups lived in relative harmony. However, Penn's acceptance of all people was a double-edged sword for the Indians, because as many non-Quaker settlers came to the colony, they underestimated Penn's benevolent policy. So this is the I'm gonna just make an assumption, and I may prove it or I may not. My assumption is this is the first event, this is the first encounter in history that a relatively friendly group of people came to understand the Indians, to be friendly with the Indians. What? So we are almost done with part 1. Philadelphia, meaning the city of brotherly love, grew up at the junction of, I'm not gonna pronounce it, Schuylkill and Delaware rivers. It was a carefully planned city organized on a strict grid pattern with wide tree-shaded streets, substantial brick and stone houses, and busy docks. Soon after this settlement of Philadelphia, the first migration of Germans to North America took place, creating the city of Germantown. These were the Pennsylvania Dutch, from the word Deutsch, which means German in the German language. Penn's new colony was decidedly liberal and included a representative assembly elected by the freemen, or all of the landowners of the colony. Penn guaranteed freedom of worship to all residents, and there was no tax-supported church in Pennsylvania, so no separation of church and state. Penn hoped to show that a government could run in harmony with Quaker principles and still maintain peace and order, and that freedom of religion could thrive without an established church. Because of the Quakers' pacifist beliefs, Penn's government made no provision for military defense. A few key factors contributed to Pennsylvania's prosperity beginnings. Penn's combination of good salesmanship, firmness, and tolerance helped the colonies succeed. The Quakers' business skills and the rich soil enabled the colony to export grain, and other foodstuffs after just a short time. Cottage industries such as weaving, shoemaking, and, and cabinet making also helped the colony thrive. Within just a few years, the colony had over 2,500 people. By 1700, only the well-established colonies of Virginia and Massachusetts were larger. In 1682, the Duke of York granted Penn the colony of Delaware, which was the area between Maryland and the Delaware River. The colony was named after Lord de la Warr, a harsh military governor who came to Virginia in 1610. Yeah, his last name was Warr, so War, go figure, he was the general. I like to have fun with you guys during these video lessons, so yeah, no kidding, right? Delaware was closely associated with Pennsylvania for many years, and in 1703 it was granted its own assembly. From then until the American Revolution, it had its own assembly but remained under the governor of Pennsylvania. The English middle colonies of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware shared several common features. The middle colonies tended to be urban and were linked by trade and commerce early on. Unlike Puritan New England or the Anglican South, there was no dominant religious group, resulting in relative tolerance among groups from Quakers to Lutherans to Dutch Reformed and Catholics. The area became a refuge for a variety of dissenters and religious misfits. So this is where our religion freedom, our religion tolerance in America, in our Constitution, really does come from. The cities along the coast of the middle colonies were maritime centers of ships that brought supplies from Europe and returned to Europe filled with grains, furs, and lumber for shipbuilding. Culturally, the settlers in the middle colonies thought of themselves as Europeans and tried as much as possible to replicate the lifestyles, social relations, and cultural traditions of their homeland. Like many first-generation migrants, they saw themselves as expatriates who happened to live outside of their mother country, rather than immigrants who were intent on making something different. So, let me drink before I give you this bombshell. So, this is a myth that comes up in middle school history, and you are led to believe this until college, or in this case, AP US history. When they first started to migrate to America, they didn't want to be free from England. They felt perfectly fine with obeying the king and just living under British rule and being English subjects. not until later on when we talk about the Declaration of Independence and the events leading to the Revolutionary War did they really want to become independent. That is something that's a misconception. So that is part one of this video. Feel free to go to Google Classroom and click on part two.